Hello, and welcome to Meet the College of Social Work Faculty series. Today, with me, I have Dr. Betty Wilson. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
So, in the series, we like to introduce our guests to our College of Social Work faculty. So, who is Dr. Betty Wilson?
So I joined the College of Social Work in August of 2024 as a tenure track assistant professor. But actually, I am a two-time graduate of the college. So I received my MSW in 2016 and then received my PhD in 2022. So I have a deep appreciation for the college, and I'm just happy to be back in a position where I can pour into the next generation of scholars.
Yes, thank you for that information. Surprisingly, I graduated with my MSW from the College of Social Work too in 2017.
I know. So we should have crossed paths, but
we should have, but I was a part-time student.
Okay.
So that may be why we
Yeah.
did.
And I was full-time. Yeah.
Yes. And like you, I'm very, very appreciative to the college and all of the knowledge that I gained from the faculty, the staff, my field experience, and the University of South Carolina as a whole.
Yeah. It's almost like a Cinderella story to be back, like to come to USC in 2014, coming from a small HBCU, and then being here and now as an assistant professor. It's a beautiful story to tell, so I'm just excited to be back.
Awesome. We're happy to have you. So, what is social work to you?
Social work to me is, I feel like it's just a safe space. It's rooted in my own personal values when I think about the core things that I care about, equity, social justice, empathy, just caring for people. Social work is that niche that helps me to hone in and lean more into those values. It's also a vessel for advocacy. I feel like folks who are interested in vulnerable populations and you want to translate that into social justice, social work is that perfect marriage of those values. And so for me, it's just always a home. My grandmother was a social worker, and it was just destined for me to be here. So, yes.
We really have a lot in common.
What?
My mom is a social worker.
Really?
My dad has his MSW, and my great aunt is a social worker. And
it was already destined for you to be a social worker.
Yes. And my husband's grandmother graduated from this program as well with her MSW in the first graduating class.
See, we need to do a series about you and your family. No, seriously. That would be beautiful to tell.
We'll see.
My grandmother was the first social worker I met, and then I have cousins who went into the field. But yeah, she was one of the first. So yeah, that's amazing.
So another question that we have for you is, what drew you to social work rather than other professions?
Yes. So y'all will hear me talk a lot about my granny, by the way. Queen Wilson, shout out to her. But my grandmother, I was at Claflin. I was majoring in sociology and African American studies, and also minoring in criminal justice. So I was going to do something related to policing, law enforcement, the criminal legal system. I just wasn't sure. And then my senior year, I got a call from my grandmother, who was retired from being a social worker for 35 years, but she was now working at Claflin. And she said, Betty, there's a recruiter coming from USC College of Social Work. You have to be there. I'm like, I'm good. I'm figuring out. I think I may go into probation and parole. And she's like, well, just go and listen and just give it a chance and hear what she has to say. And so I believe it was Miss Danita. Miss Danita was here back in 2015, 2016 when I got here. But she was the recruiter who came to Claflin, and she talked about the program and all it had to offer. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. So I submitted my paperwork and I got accepted into the program. But it was really my grandmother's intuition. She knew this was a pathway for me even before I saw it myself.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Another fun fact. My mom, after she got her MSW, worked with probation and parole in Pennsylvania.
Wow. See, we just need to have a conversation off camera. Because that's amazing. Again, there's some overlap because I knew there was going to be a way that I was advocating for people for fair and equity in the criminal legal system. I just didn't know what it would look like. So I'm glad that social work just allows me to still do that work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because they're so interconnected. And
absolutely.
It's very important to have an interdisciplinary perspective when you're working within the criminal justice systems, because of all of the different nuances and outside influences as to why people are in the criminal justice system, how people react to the criminal justice system, and so much more.
completely agree.
Awesome. How do you balance ethical standards and personal values?
When I was thinking about this question, I was like, how do I balance it? But for me, they're almost intertwined. So my personal values, shared with Nick earlier, um, being caring, empathetic, advocating for marginalized populations, listening to people's stories, and honoring what they have to say. Those are just things I carry with me on a day to day. So understanding that they're also rooted in our code of ethics, it just kind of amplifies them. So I'm remaining grounded in my work as a social worker because it is true to who I am. So there isn't a disentanglement that I have to go through in my mind about how to be ethical or where my ethics lie because they are rooted in who I am. But having social work as a framework that drives my teaching, research, and practice, I think it just kind of bolsters me to continue to do the work because there's a principle behind this. It's just not me doing it. It is, okay, there's a profession and a discipline that also adheres to it.
Yes. And I'm sure you learned almost all of it from Queen Wilson
Absolutely.
herself.
Shout out to Granny again. Absolutely. I mean, she's the most caring person. There were things when she was working in Child Protective Services, she would come home and say, I can't disclose this. I'm on call this week. I can't tell you about the case. And even now, when she's long retired, she will not disclose names. Mm-hmm. And so she is just a person who moves with a lot of integrity. Mm-hmm. But also that was intertwined with her work. She had to be mindful of what she would share outside of social work and who she would share it with. So seeing her display those traits early on, I'm like, okay, integrity is important to me, but it is also core to social work.
Yes. And I'm not sure about you, but I grew up in a small community in Aiken, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And although my mom was social working in Aiken, South Carolina, mm-hmm. she was seeing students that were my classmates.
Yeah.
But she could not disclose
Absolutely.
Information due to confidentiality. Mm-hmm. So the same way that Queen Wilson did not disclose, as social workers, we are not allowed to do that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd come up to her in the grocery store and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hey, Miss Wilson. And she's like, okay, I work with that person. And that's the end of the story.
Yes.
And so I think even when I do a lot of my research and I'm listening to the stories, I'm making sure I document that in a mindful way, mm-hmm. and I get permission to use their story. So it's still that ethical piece that I consider. Yeah.
Awesome. You've mentioned empathy, you've mentioned caring, mm-hmm. you've mentioned how mentally and emotionally involved social work can be. Mm-hmm. What do you do for self-care?
So for me, I love concerts.
Okay.
I tend to go to concerts alone, although my friends, shout out to them. I have a good time, but for me, I like to go and just be in a space where I'm connecting with just random people. It's just a good vibe. And so music has always been something that's a part of my life. I've danced since I was young. And so just being able to be in a space where you kind of leave work at home, mm-hmm. is you just relax. And so that's something I love. I go to concerts. I'm looking forward to the next one. I went to the Millennium Tour. So. Okay. I have that one coming up, but also watching Survivor, like mm-hmm. shows where I'm just like, I don't have to think critically about it. It's just kind of like a safe space for me. So anything outside, but also just being at home, mm-hmm. taking a time to debrief from the day. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard to take work to a concert. So okay. I completely understand. It's loud. There are lights. You can't focus that much on work. So yes.
Absolutely. That is the last thing on my mind. And I get to meet just random people who are also having a good time. Mm-hmm. And maybe because that's an opportunity for me to really be an extrovert, I tend mm-hmm. to be like in between. So yeah, I love it.
Awesome. What is community healing? And how are social workers mm-hmm. a part of this process? Mm-hmm.
So, community healing, I see it as an intentional process of mm-hmm. reckoning with the historical past, where traumas come from, but also recognizing that trauma still persists for certain communities. And so my work focuses on historically marginalized communities, Black communities who have dealt with policing disparities. And so when I think about community healing, it is a reckoning with the current traumas that they face, but also where this trauma stemmed from. Community healing is also providing spaces where people can connect, find belonging, safety, cultural awareness that they're not alone in their lived experiences. So it is a collective effort, but it starts with a reckoning of where trauma and hurt stems from. Yeah.
Awesome. And how do social workers help in this process? How do we help create those safe places
Mm-hmm.
and being able to allow people to be themselves and express potentially where their trauma has come from and how
Mm-hmm.
they can heal?
Yeah, social workers, I believe we are uniquely positioned because some of the core things that we learn early on in our professional education is about listening intentionally to the stories of people and in a non-judgmental way. And so
Mm-hmm.
providing those safe spaces is okay, I'm listening, I'm not judging you, but how can I offer my support and insight, my expertise, but also recognizing that people are experts in their lived experiences. So
Yes.
if you listen long enough, they will tell you what they need. I need safety, I need belonging. Okay, so what does that look like? Whether that's in a group space or individual consultations. So I think intentionally listening to stories and being mindful of our own biases and assumptions.
Yes.
Yeah.
How can social workers work towards rectifying or reducing health
Mm-hmm.
disparities among historically marginalized groups?
Mm-hmm. It's a question I think about a lot because this is where my work is transitioning to more culturally relevant interventions.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of modalities in social work. I think every day you can find another one, which is great. I think it offers different avenues depending on your population, but making sure the population you're working with, that intervention or strategy is culturally relevant. And so the populations I work with who have experienced racial trauma from policing, trauma informed practice. First of all, do you understand why they are presenting with certain mental health concerns? Where does it stem from? Um, Mindfulness, that's another intervention that I'm leaning more into. And so I think social work is just doing the work to research the community, learn their history, but also making sure the interventions align with the needs of the community.
Awesome. What can students who are interested in social work
Mm-hmm.
do to help communities in a culturally responsive
Mm.
way outside of what you just stated?
Yes. I think it first starts with that personal reflection. I think, again, just like practitioners who are doing this work every day, social work students, those first 2 years are pivotal because you're
Mm-hmm.
now confronting some of these biases, perceptions, assumptions that you may have had. Um, and I think there's a lot of deep work. For some, it can be scary because
Mm-hmm.
now you're maybe confronting in my family dynamics or my community or my own perspectives. And I think being able to confront that in an honest way is the first step, but also practicing cultural humility. So, communities that you may not look like or have lived experiences with, how do I listen to their stories? How do I relate to them in some way? And I think that takes a lot of intentional effort, which can be done. It's an
Yes.
evolving process. It's not a journey. I'm going to get here tomorrow.
Right.
It's just waking up every day to say, I'm going to reflect on what I learned and how can I be better.
Yes. It's what Brene Brown calls wrestling with vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
and what I call being comfortable with uncomfortability, because that
Absolutely.
is where the most growth occurs.
Absolutely.
When we're able to wrestle with our preconceived thoughts of a population
Mm-hmm.
or a group of individuals so that you can actually see them for who they are,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily what society or
Absolutely.
what their culture may say that they are,
Mm-hmm.
right?
What we've seen in the media. And I've always said, I am so grateful for this program because most of my deep thinking and critical thinking happened in the classroom through in class activities, but just being challenged. Oh, I
Yes.
thought this. Now I have a new way of thinking. That's wonderful. Lean into it. Yeah.
Yes. Lean into it. Your dissertation introduces an integrated conceptual framework
Mm-hmm.
examining the psychosocial impact of exposure to violence,
Mm-hmm.
specifically police violence. How has that framework evolved since completing your dissertation, and how are you applying it in your current research that has recently shifted a little bit towards health disparities?
Yes, absolutely. So, like you said, my initial conceptual framework was specifically designed to understand the psychosocial processes of how constantly being exposed to police violence, so whether that be social media or on the news or reading an article or hearing it word of mouth with your friends, how do these constant exposures trickle down to the individual level, contributing to trauma, mental stress, and grief, and then also dispersing into the community as well. But now I am shifting to a much more health equity lens. So, not just explaining how trauma occurs, but what do we do about this trauma in a very culturally informed way. And so, focusing on developing, implementing, and also evaluating interventions that help communities who have been exposed to these incidents kind of process those traumas, but also practice healing mechanisms that are rooted in community wellness.
Awesome. It's amazing that you share that you are focusing on trauma and its impacts, because most of the time when people think of trauma and the impacts of police violence, etc., they simply think about mental impacts. They don't think about the stress and the increased high blood pressure.
Absolutely.
They don't think about how it might impact their ability to exercise when they know that there's police violence around them. So they might not want to exercise as frequently as they did in the past regarding walking outside, things of that nature. So I love how you're shifting slightly towards health disparities, because it all is intersected with trauma.
Absolutely. And to your point, I describe in one of my articles on racial battle fatigue this constant feeling of scanning the environment. And so some of the students I talked with, which were Black college students, talked about, well, after Trayvon Martin, I'm scared to wear a hoodie when I'm walking, or I have to talk with my mom just to make sure, or at night I don't feel comfortable walking. And so those constant feelings of monitoring the environment, that's a lot that wears on you, and it becomes stressful. So that's the realm that I'm focusing on, not just the mental health, but the physical as well, the spiritual health.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great work. Great work. It's so needed and so necessary, especially in these times.
Yeah, absolutely.
In your work on family socialization around law enforcement encounters, what have you found to be some of the most powerful or protective strategies families can use to prepare youth, and how might social workers better support these efforts?
Yes. One of the most common strategies is the talk. And so I write about this a lot in my work. It's a intergenerational tradition where Black families have conversations, historically Black families have conversations with their children about how to navigate interactions with law enforcement, how to safely communicate or monitor your behaviors so that you can come home unharmed. The idea is that you are going to survive this encounter. And so that's been one of the most protective strategies. But also it comes with a lot of pain. It comes with stress. Going back to this idea, well, mom having to tell me about this incident. We just saw something in the news. Now I have to sit you down and tell you, all right, you can wear this hoodie only in the daytime, not at night. And so looking at the impact that it has, not on the child who's receiving the talk, but also the family structure. And so when I think about my role as a social worker, what do I consider to be interventions rooted in family wellness? Because it's not just impacting the child, and now we see in my research and others that it doesn't stop in childhood. These talks don't stop when you're 6 or 7 or 8.
Right.
They continue well into emerging adulthood. And so these constant conversations, how do we as social workers make sure that when we're suggesting interventions, we're considering the family unit, and how that is centered in resilience as well?
Your response sparked in my mind something that my mom used to say to me all the time. I don't sleep well when you're not home at night.
Wow.
And now that I'm a mother, I understand where she's coming from. And it was from a safety standpoint, yes. But now as I've grown and progressed and learned and seen the impacts of police violence, I feel the same way as a mom about my children. They're not driving yet, no, but they might be in the car with their grandmother who's driving them somewhere. If they get stopped,
absolutely,
are they going to make it home safely?
Absolutely.
So that really resonated with me.
It's the fear, of what is to come. You may not be driving now, but you still have interactions with other people, or maybe exposed to it vicariously. And so I think that is also an avenue for law enforcement and social work. That's why I'm so appreciative of the relationships I'm building now, because that is a lens to share with law enforcement, that you may see reactions that people may show during stops. It's not indicative of a criminal activity happening, but it's trauma and stress that is coming from being in the presence, given that we've seen so many incidents.
Yes. As someone specializing in community centered qualitative methods, how do you build trust and meaningful relationships or partnerships with historically underserved communities when researching sensitive topics like
Mm-hmm.
policing and trauma?
Mm-hmm. One of the first things is to be authentic. Show up, tell people why you're there in the first place. Like, if I'm
Yes.
here to learn more about your experiences, articulate that, be honest and transparent, especially with historically marginalized communities who may have distrust of higher education institutions, who may see it as extractive, or you're here to get something and that's it. So be intentional, be mindful of the community's history with said institutions, be transparent, and just keep your word. If you say you're going to do something, I'm going to follow up. People expect that, and I think that's one thing I found is being reliable is high stakes for community. It builds trust. Trying to think, is there something else as far as building trust? And also being mindful of the benefit and the unintentional consequences. Like, yes, this study is beneficial to me. It's going to help me share your work or your stories with the larger audiences. But also, what are the unintended consequences of studying trauma? I'm listening to your stories, but am I re-triggering you? Am I re-traumatizing? And so I'm also transparent about that as well. What you share with me can bring up feelings. So I want you to be mindful. We can take a break in between, but I'm not just going to say the study is going to be easy. And so I think start being honest first with your intentions, but also relaying that to the people involved.
Great. I 100% agree with your comment on authenticity
Mm-hmm.
because people can tell when you're being fake.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, they know when you are not real.
Yep.
They know when you're not genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they feel that, they will shut down and cut it off.
Absolutely.
Another thing that I was going to say is we also have to meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You can't come in using your PhD
Mm-hmm.
language when this community may not have a educational level above 8th grade,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
So we have to meet people where they are, not just from a mental perspective, but from an educational perspective and how we communicate with them as well.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. That goes to the point I was thinking about, is knowing that community members are experts in their own lived experiences. Mm-hmm. I think we have great intentions and we may mean well. I'm coming in, I want to do this, but also, what do you want to do? You're the expert. You lived here. You know your own experiences better than I do. So seeing it as more collaborative as opposed to paternalistic, like, I'm here to tell you what you should be doing.
Yes, I love that. For students interested in pursuing research and the intersection of policing, public health, and racial equity, what skills, experience, or training would you recommend prioritizing during their graduate study?
Yes. If you're interested in doing this work, I would say first, a lot of reflective understanding about why. I think for me, I knew why I was doing this work, and it started with the death of Trayvon Martin when I was at Claflin, and it happened. I believe I was a junior, and there was a bus going to Florida, and I called my grandmother. I was like, "Grandma," again, going back to Granny. I was like, "Granny, there's a bus and we're going to, protest and speak out about why this guy should be prosecuted. And I just want to let you know that this is something I want to do." She was like, "Okay, be safe." And that was my introduction into advocacy around racial violence and policing in our country. And so that's why I go back to my why. Like, when I'm doing this work and it gets heavy, I know my why because I witnessed it and I know that there's a need to speak out. And so this work is not one of the sexiest works you can be doing. It's less attractive because you're navigating so much, and it takes a lot out of you. So if you plan to go into this realm or anything similar, especially listening to stories that are often painful to hear, know why you want to do it, because there are going to be days where you don't want to do it, and you need to be grounded. But also work with researchers who are doing the work. I oftentimes work with students. I love it. That's actually one of the best parts of my work. I love showing up and talking with y'all. But I love working with students because you get to see the fire. Like, some students who are kind of on the cusp of figuring out what they want to do next. Working with a faculty member, writing up some stuff or conducting interviews or just sitting in on interviews, you get to see that this is a passion that they didn't know existed inside of them. So yeah, reaching out. I'm more than happy to work with folks. I have worked with undergraduate, master's, and PhD students, and that's just something I just really enjoy.
Awesome. And it's funny that you say that you went to Florida to protest, I actually organized a march and a protest at the State House. Not the State House, excuse me. At the City of Aiken courthouse after Trayvon Martin was murdered.
What?
I'll show you pictures after.
Yes! What? Oh.
Yes, and the NAACP chapter spoke. We had the youth NAACP marching with us. It was a really good experience. But yes.
That's beautiful because I think in social work, we kind of lose that part of political and social action, like boots on the ground. We can talk with you in the classroom, but it definitely takes us being out organizing.
Yes.
I'm so glad that you did that.
Yes.
I love that.
We really wanted to highlight not just the situation of what happened, but what the impacts were of his murder and how we as people, in particular people of color, how we need to and should respond when we may be in those type of situations to ensure again that we come home safely.
Absolutely. And you had critical people at the table.
Yes.
You were already
and
an advocate.
The chief of police from the city of Aiken marched with us.
Wow.
Yes. It was amazing. I'll show you pictures.
Absolutely. Please.
Interview
I'm invested now. Are we wrapping up? Like, I want to see.
Yes. That
was amazing because I was Miss NAACP at Claflin.
Really?
Yeah. So I wish I was more involved now. You know, kind of like.
Yeah.
But oh my God! So were you a student then?
No, I graduated with my undergraduate degree in 2011.
Okay.
And I worked for 3 years before I came into the program.
Okay.
So I believe it was like a year or 2 years after I had graduated, but I was working at Aiken Center for Alcohol and Drug Services in the prevention department, and I was like, I have got to do something about this. We had hoodies and shirts.
Absolutely.
Had his outline with his hood on and hashtag justice on it. It was amazing. So I'll show you pictures.
And that's kind of the conversations I have with students. I'm like, we hear about, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement with George Floyd, but it really stemmed from Trayvon Martin. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, girl. I love that for you.
I'll have to show you pictures. Thank you so much, Betty, for joining us and having this conversation. It was engaging. It was informative. It was fun. And I appreciate you sharing a bit about you and Granny with us and your story on social work, how you came to social work, and so much more. Feel free to join us again for the College of Social Work Faculty Series. We look forward to seeing you soon, and I hope you have a great day.